Most of us accept that forgetting names and feeling mentally sluggish is just part of getting older. It's a familiar story. By our 40s, we start to notice it. The word that's on the tip of our tongue but won't come out. The moment of blankness in the middle of a sentence. And by the time we reach our 60s, the data confirms our fears. Certain key areas in our brain can lose about 1 to 2% of their volume each year. But here's the part that changes everything. Science is now showing that those same brain structures, the ones that seem to be shrinking, can actually get bigger again. They can grow. This presents a profound puzzle. If your brain is so vital that your body has built a fortress around it, why does it start to falter in the modern world? And why are certain simple actions proving to be a kind of reverse gear for that decline? Your brain is not failing. It is responding to its environment. This is where the common story about brain aging falls apart. Your mind wasn't built to thrive in a state of stillness. For the vast majority of human existence, being sharp, being able to think clearly, was directly tied to moving, exploring, and navigating a physical world. When that link is broken, the brain simply does what it has evolved to do. It adapts to a new, quieter reality. I'm Daniel Lieberman. I'm a professor of evolutionary biology at Harvard, and my life's work has been to understand how our bodies and our minds were shaped by the demands of our ancient past. My goal here is to help you understand why your biology often feels out of sync with today's world, and how we can learn to work with it, not against it. Welcome to the evolution of you. If you're interested in the hidden science of how our bodies truly function, consider subscribing. Each episode explores a new mystery of human evolution and what it means for our health today. To grasp how we can not just slow down brain aging, but even reverse some of its effects, we need to travel back in time. Way back before the invention of the chair, before the 9 to 5, before the very concept of a workout even existed. The central fact to understand is this: our brain wasn't designed for a stationary life. For millennia, thinking wasn't something you did while sitting still. It was something you did while on the move. You thought while walking to a new water source, while tracking the movement of animals, while scanning the horizon for food, and while navigating complex social interactions with your group. Imagine a day in the life of your ancestors. Dawn breaks, and almost immediately the body is in motion. There are no alarm clocks, no morning commutes in climate-controlled boxes. Instead, there is the immediate need to find water, to scout for ripe fruit, to follow the subtle signs left by animals. Every step is a decision, every turn a test of memory. The brain is not a passenger, it is the pilot, constantly reading the land, predicting the future, and updating its internal map. In essence, the brain developed in a state of perpetual motion. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a survival mechanism. There was a constant feedback loop between your physical actions and your mental processing. The hunter interpreting a distant shape. The gatherer remembering the exact spot where roots were most plentiful. The traveler constructing a mental map of the land. The brain was never just reacting. It was constantly updating its model of the world based on where the body was going. And that required something physical. It required movement itself. What's fascinating is the biological cascade that happens when we move. When you walk rhythmically, when you hike, when you carry a load, your body doesn't just build muscle. It sends a powerful chemical signal to your brain. Blood flow increases, delivering oxygen and nutrients. And a particular molecule, often called the miracle grow for the brain, is released. Its technical name is brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. Let's pause on BDNF for a moment, because it deserves more than a passing mention. This molecule is not just a helper, it is a master architect. When BDNF levels rise, your brain begins to strengthen existing synapses and even sprout new ones. It protects neurons from stress and encourages the growth of new neurons in the hippocampus, that same region central to memory. In essence, BDNF is the reason your brain can rebuild itself. And here's the beautiful irony. Your body produces this powerful cognitive enhancer most abundantly when you do something as humble as taking a walk. BDNF supports the growth of new neural connections and helps protect the ones you already have. It's a fundamental part of how our brains stay resilient, and countless studies have shown that something as simple as a consistent walking routine can significantly boost BDNF levels. But this isn't a new age biohack, it's ancient programming. Our brains evolved expecting us to move. When we meet that expectation, the system works. This leads to a critical realization. The human brain isn't just a thinking machine, it's a thinking and moving machine. That distinction is everything when it comes to aging. In the hunter-gatherer societies that mirror our evolutionary past, older adults weren't sedentary. They remained active, deeply integrated into the life of the community. They gathered food, they helped raise children, they shared their vast knowledge of the land. Their movement patterns changed, of course. It was slower, less intense, but it rarely stopped. And this perpetual engagement appears to have been a key factor in preserving their cognitive edge. Anthropologists studying these groups have consistently found that elders serve as the community's living library. They remember the routes of ancient migrations, the uses of medicinal plants, the patterns of weather, and the intricate web of social ties spanning decades. Your brain is not a machine that inevitably breaks down with time. It is a responsive organ. But here's the conflict. The environment that built our brains is gone. Modern life has perfected the art of separating thought from movement. We sit to work, we sit to learn, we sit to connect. A typical office worker can spend over 10 hours a day in a chair. Retirement, instead of being a time of exploration, can sometimes lead to even less movement. This creates an evolutionary mismatch. The brain still expects the stimulation of physical exploration, but our modern world provides long, uninterrupted stretches of stillness instead. And this is where the real misunderstanding about brain aging begins. The human brain is facing a challenge it never evolved to handle: prolonged sitting. For the vast span of our history, extended stillness was simply not a thing. Rest existed, but it was short and followed by more movement. Today, the pattern is reversed. For many, movement is a scheduled event, while stillness is the default state. One of the brain structures most sensitive to this shift is the hippocampus. This is a seahorse-shaped region deep in the brain that is essential for forming new memories and for spatial navigation. It is remarkably adaptable, but it's also vulnerable to a lack of activity. When our physical activity drops, a sequence of biological changes begins. Blood flow to the brain becomes less dynamic. Growth factors like BDNF decrease. The neural connections that depend on stimulation start to weaken. Over time, the brain, in a cost-cutting move, reallocates its resources. Now, that sounds alarming, but from an evolutionary standpoint, it's perfectly logical. The brain is an energy hog. It makes up only 2% of our body weight, but consumes a staggering 20% of our energy at rest. Evolution would have strongly favored any mechanism that conserved energy. If your environment tells you that exploration is no longer required, if you stop moving, the brain will shift from a state of expansion to a state of efficiency. This isn't failure. This is adaptation. But here's the incredible part. The human brain is also one of the most plastic organs in the animal kingdom. This plasticity, the ability to reorganize and form new connections, stays with us throughout our lives. This means the signals of inactivity can be reversed. And one of the most powerful signals the brain recognizes is deceptively simple: consistent rhythmic walking. Neuroscience labs have documented this. In a landmark study, adults in their 60s and 70s who engaged in a regular walking program for about a year showed an increase in the volume of their hippocampus. It wasn't a huge increase, it was about 2%. But in the context of brain aging, that's revolutionary. Instead of shrinking, that crucial memory center actually grew. Let that sink in for a moment. A year of regular walking did what no pill or brain game could reliably achieve. It reversed the typical trajectory of aging in a core memory region. The study didn't involve marathon training or high-intensity intervals. It was walking, something our bodies have done for 2 million years. This leads to a deeply counterintuitive conclusion. The most powerful tool for protecting your aging brain might not be a crossword puzzle or a brain training app. It might be physical exploration. Our culture has convinced us that to keep our minds sharp, we need to do mental gymnastics. Sudoku, memory games, complex apps. These things are stimulating, for sure. But they don't provide the complete environmental package our brains evolved to expect. In our ancestral environment, cognitive challenges were always embedded in movement. When you walk through varied terrain, your brain is juggling 100 tasks at once. It's processing visual information, balancing your body, tracking your location, and staying alert for sounds and social cues. The entire brain is engaged. Sitting still while doing a puzzle, no matter how complex, only activates a part of that network. This leads to a deeper insight. Human intelligence didn't develop in a vacuum, separate from the body. It evolved as a tool for a moving organism navigating a complex world. When that organism stops moving for extended periods, the brain gets a different message. It's a message that says, things are predictable now. High-level spatial navigation isn't needed. Let's conserve energy. This is why many of us mistake an environmental problem for an inevitable part of aging. The decline we feel might not be the unavoidable crumbling of our cognitive faculties, but rather a response to a world that has become too still, too predictable. So the goal shifts. It's not about fighting aging with heroic effort. It's about reconstructing in our modern lives the conditions under which our brains evolved to thrive. When those ancient signals return, the brain is often surprisingly quick to respond. And this realization opens the door to a new way of thinking about cognitive longevity. Now, at this point, many people jump to the obvious conclusion: I just need to exercise more. But the evolutionary story is more nuanced. Our brains weren't shaped to respond to exercise as a concept. That's a modern invention. For most of our history, people didn't work out. They moved with purpose. They explored. They went on journeys. Movement was woven into the fabric of life, into curiosity and survival. This distinction is crucial because of another discovery: the brain's powerful response to novelty. When we enter a new environment, the hippocampus kicks into high gear. It starts building what neuroscientists call cognitive maps. This ability to create a mental layout of a new place was essential for a hunter-gatherer. But the hippocampus isn't just a GPS. It's the same system that forms our personal memories. It ties together experiences across time. This means that when we explore new physical spaces, we are directly stimulating the very circuits responsible for memory itself. This creates a powerful loop. Movement stimulates exploration, exploration stimulates mapping, and mapping strengthens memory. However, our modern world has weakened this loop. Think about the structure of your typical day. You wake up in the same room, walk the same hallway, drive the same roads, sit in the same chair, and stare at the same screens. The environment becomes incredibly predictable. From the brain's perspective, this is a signal to stop investing so much energy in building maps. Why update a model when nothing changes? Over time, this quieting of the environment can lead to a subtle but real decline in the activity of the very regions we need for learning and memory. And this brings us to a key insight. The quality of your movement may be more important than the quantity. A slow, meandering walk through a new park stimulates the brain in ways a repetitive workout on a treadmill does not. A hike on a trail with uneven ground forces your navigation and balance systems to engage. Even small variations matter. A different route to the grocery store, a walk in a neighborhood you've never visited, a few minutes in a park where the sensory input is constantly shifting. These simple acts create a richer stream of data for your brain to process. And that processing is the exercise your mind needs. This is why elders in traditional societies often remain so cognitively sharp. Their environment is still demanding. The seasons change, the landscape is varied, and social structures are fluid. Their brains are constantly challenged to keep up. Our environment, designed for convenience, has made life easier, but biologically, it's become quieter. This is the paradox. The technologies that simplify our lives might be inadvertently stripping away the very stimulation our brains need to stay healthy. So what if the best strategy for long-term brain health isn't to add more cognitive tasks, but to reintroduce exploration? We're not talking about extreme adventures. We're talking about the regular, varied experience of moving through the world in unpredictable ways. Walking a new path, exploring a part of town you don't know, spending time in nature where the sensory information is constantly changing. These actions seem simple, but they activate deeply ancient systems in the brain. Systems that are designed to stay active for your entire life. Which brings us to a final shift in perspective. If the brain is so responsive to its environment, then protecting your cognitive function isn't primarily about discipline or willpower. It's about design. The spaces you inhabit, the routines you follow, they are quietly shaping your brain's future. So the practical question becomes, how do we design our modern lives so our brains receive the signals they evolved to need? This changes the conversation. Instead of relying on motivation, which is a finite resource, we can rely on structure. Instead of asking, how do I force myself to exercise? We can ask, how can I make my environment naturally encourage movement and curiosity? For most of human history, this was automatic. Your environment required movement. You had to walk to get water, you had to travel to find food, you had to navigate to explore. Movement was not an add-on to life. It was life. Today, we can engineer these moments back in, not by adding a grueling workout, but by making small structural changes. Choose to walk for part of your commute. Park farther from the store. Walk after meals. These are not intense sessions, but they are frequent signals. And from the brain's perspective, frequency matters as much, if not more, than intensity. Our ancestors moved throughout the day, not in one concentrated burst. Another structural lever is variety. Commit to walking a new route on the weekend. Go to a different park. Spend time in environments where you have to pay attention. Even a small dose of novelty challenges the brain to update its internal maps. The brain thrives on a state of gentle unpredictability. Not stress or chaos, but the kind of mild uncertainty that comes from exploring a new place. Natural environments are masters at providing this. Uneven ground forces your body to adapt. Changing light and sound patterns constantly re-engage your attention. In evolutionary terms, your brain recognizes these as meaningful signals. Even urban environments can work. A bustling market, a new street with different architecture, a cultural event. These introduce sensory diversity that engages the brain in ways that a screen cannot. The point is, none of this requires extreme effort. Your brain isn't asking for you to become an endurance athlete. It's just asking for the signals that shaped its evolution for hundreds of thousands of years. When those signals disappear, the brain quiets down. When they return, it wakes up. This is why a simple pattern emerges in studies of healthy aging. People who stay mobile, socially connected, and curious about their environment don't just have better outcomes. They often have brains that function as if they were decades younger. They aren't fighting aging. They are living in a way that more closely resembles the human blueprint. And that brings us back to our starting point. Why does the brain, this incredibly protected organ, seem to decline? The answer from an evolutionary perspective is simple. The brain doesn't age in a vacuum. It ages in an environment. For most of our history, that environment was a constant source of stimulation. Landscapes changed, social groups shifted, and resources needed to be found. Even into old age, individuals were embedded in a dynamic world. In that context, staying cognitively engaged was a survival advantage. Modern life has altered that relationship. We have removed many of the signals that once kept our cognitive systems active. We've replaced exploration with convenience, and in doing so, we've created a world that is cognitively quieter. This leads to a common misunderstanding. When people notice their memory or focus slipping, they assume it's simply because they're getting older. And yes, time is a factor, but the pace and severity of that change are powerfully influenced by the environment. Your brain is not a machine that is predestined to break down. It is a responsive organ, constantly tuning itself to the signals it receives. It makes evolutionary sense. If you are no longer needing to navigate or remember complex landscapes, your brain will conserve energy by quieting those systems. But when those signals return, movement, novelty, social interaction, the brain's inherent plasticity allows it to respond. This capacity for adaptation is a hallmark of being human. Even in later life, your brain can strengthen connections and reorganize itself. What can feel like irreversible decline might instead be a reflection of an environment that has become too quiet. Protecting the aging brain may depend less on intensity of movement and more on variability of movement. Once you see aging through this lens, the goal changes. It's not about desperately trying to be young again. Evolution didn't design us for perpetual peak performance. It designed us for a life of trade-offs, where surviving and passing on knowledge were key. Aging is part of that story, but so is cognitive vitality. Humans evolved longer lifespans partly because older adults were so valuable. They were the knowledge keepers, the ones who remembered the landscapes and survival strategies that kept the group alive. For that knowledge to be useful, the brain had to remain functional. The aging brain was never meant to shut down. It was meant to remain engaged. So, the fastest way to support your long-term brain health isn't to wage war on your biology. It's to reconnect with it. Move through the world, let your curiosity guide you, explore new places. Not because it's a trendy wellness hack, but because it's ancient. It is the environment your brain has known for almost all of human existence. It is the condition under which it evolved to stay sharp, adaptable, and curious throughout the lifespan. And when we create even small pieces of that world in our daily lives, the brain responds. If you found this perspective valuable, hit the like button to help others discover the evolution of you. And let me know in the comments, what's one small change you're going to make this week to introduce more movement and exploration into your routine?